A Werewolf Shifter Romance, written by Amelia Hart. Chapter 1. The Awakening. The fluorescent lights of Millbrook General Hospital flickered overhead as Isadora Vale checked her watch for the third time in 10 minutes. 2:15 a.m. on her 23rd birthday, and she was still stuck in the emergency wing, updating patient charts that seemed to multiply every time she looked away. The night shift had always been her preference. Fewer people, less chaos, and most importantly, fewer questions about why a young woman like her had no family to go home to. Izzy tucked a strand of her dark chestnut hair behind her ear, her emerald eyes scanning the nearly empty hallway. The mountain town of Millbrook rarely saw much excitement after midnight, which made nights like these perfect for catching up on paperwork. She'd grown accustomed to the solitude over the years, ever since her grandparents passed when she was 16. They'd been her whole world after her parents died in a car crash when she was just 5 years old. The memory of finding her grandparents that morning still haunted her dreams. Strange bite marks on their necks, the house turned upside down, and a police investigation that went nowhere fast. Probable animal attack, the sheriff had concluded, despite the fact that the doors were locked from the inside and no windows were broken. The case was filed away, and Izzy was left with more questions than answers. She shook her head, forcing herself to focus on the present. Today was her birthday, after all. Her grandparents had left her a sealed letter with strict instructions not to open it until she turned 23. She'd carried it with her for 7 years, and tonight, finally, she could break that seal. The hospital's automatic doors whooshed open as Izzy stepped into the cool mountain air. Her small apartment was only a 15-minute walk through the forest path, a route she'd taken countless times without incident. Millbrook was the kind of place where people left their doors unlocked, and everyone knew their neighbors. Or at least, that's how it used to be before the recent string of disappearances. 3 people had gone missing in the past month, all found days later with no memory of what happened to them. The local newspaper blamed it on wildlife, but Izzy had treated 2 of the victims. Their injuries were unlike anything she'd seen in her nursing training. Precise, almost surgical, yet too savage to be human. As she walked deeper into the woods, Izzy pulled the yellowed envelope from her purse. Her grandmother's elegant handwriting spelled out her name in faded ink. Her hands trembled slightly as she carefully opened the seal, revealing a single sheet of paper. "My dearest Isadora," the letter began. "If you are reading this, then you have reached your 23rd birthday, and there are things you must know. You are not like other people, my dear. Your parents didn't die in a car accident. They died protecting a secret that now lives within you. On this night, your true nature will awaken. You will feel it in your hands first, a warmth that spreads through your entire being. Do not be afraid. You are a mediator, one of the last of your kind, gifted with the ability to heal any living creature. But with this gift comes great danger. Trust no one except those who bleed for you first. Victor Rothschild killed your parents, and he will come for you now that your powers have awakened. Find the wolf and the vampire. They have both lost family because of your bloodline, but not by choice. They will protect you when we cannot. All our love, grandmother and grandfather." Izzy's hands began to shake as she finished reading. This couldn't be real. Vampires and werewolves were fiction, stories told to frighten children. But even as her rational mind rejected the words, she felt something strange happening to her body. A tingling sensation started in her fingertips, spreading up her arms like warm honey flowing through her veins. The letter fluttered to the ground as Izzy stumbled backward. The tingling had become a burning sensation, not painful but intense, as if every nerve ending in her hands was suddenly alive with electricity. She stared at her palms in the moonlight, watching in fascination as a faint golden glow began to emanate from her skin. The forest around her was still, except for the rustle of leaves in the gentle night breeze that carried the scent of pine and cold earth. Shadows danced between the trees, and the moon hung full and heavy, casting silver light over the landscape. The silence was broken by a low groan that seemed to come from somewhere just beyond the nearest cluster of oaks. Her heart pounded not out of fear but out of a fierce urge to help. Someone was hurt. Her nursing instincts surged forward, momentarily overtaking any doubts or confusion. She moved quickly, navigating the uneven ground with practiced ease, despite the strange new sensations coursing through her. The letter's words echoed in her mind, warning her to trust no one but hinting at allies in unexpected forms. Pushing through thick underbrush, she came upon a clearing where a man lay slumped against the trunk of a massive oak. Moonlight revealed his dark hair, damp with sweat and streaked with dirt. His clothes were torn, a stark contrast to the deep crimson that stained his chest and arms. Blood seeped from the jagged marks that should have proven fatal. "Sir," Izzy whispered, dropping to her knees. Her hands hovered over the most grievous markings, unsure of what she could do. Then, as soon as they touched his skin, a golden warmth radiated from her palms, spreading quickly like a wildfire within her. The sharp pain and bleeding began to fade before her very eyes, the deep slashes knitting closed meticulously. His eyes snapped open suddenly, revealing pure amber orbs that shimmered unnaturally in the moonlight. His gaze locked with hers, piercing and full of wary curiosity. "What are you?" he asked, his voice hoarse but steadily gaining strength as if healed from the inside out. Izzy jerked her hands away as the glow faded, her breath catching in her throat. I don't know," she confessed haltingly. This shouldn't be possible. You were dying." She gestured helplessly at his now pristine chest. He staggered to a sitting position, the movement fluid despite the recent trauma. "You are a mediator," he stated with quiet certainty. "I thought your kind disappeared centuries ago." Izzy swallowed hard, confusion swirling in her mind. "My kind? What does that even mean? I was just a nurse a few hours ago. Now, this." He extended a hand, and with a wary but grateful smile, she took it. "I'm Cameron Silverwood," he introduced himself firmly. "A werewolf alpha, last of my pack. You've saved my life, and perhaps the fate of us all." The woods seemed to hold their breath as Izzy realized that her world, once so mundane and predictable, had shattered irreparably in that moment. The golden light that radiated from her hands, the man who claimed to be a werewolf alpha, these were not elements of a fantasy novel, but the frightening new reality she could no longer deny. She looked around the clearing, the faces of the towering pines mottled in silver moonlight, and knew she stood on the precipice of a life unimagined. Fear and exhilaration swirled within her, a storm of emotions that danced in time with her racing heart. Cameron's piercing amber eyes searched hers. The unspoken weight of centuries held in his gaze. "Come with me," he said softly. "You must understand what you are, and what danger you face. The night is far from over, Isadora." Slowly, apprehensively, Izzy nodded, her mind racing with questions but knowing, deep down, that the answers she sought could only be found by stepping into the shadows with Cameron Silverwood. Together, they disappeared into the depths of the forest, leaving behind the world Izzy once knew. Stepping boldly into the unknown, the moon climbed higher, spilling pale light over the rugged terrain as Izzy followed Cameron through tangled underbrush. Each step seemed heavier with the weight of unseen eyes watching, ancient eyes that lingered in the dark beyond the tree's edge. The quiet crack of twigs beneath their feet and the stirring of leaves were the only sounds accompanying them. But within that stillness rested the heartbeat of 1,000 secrets. Chapter 2. First Shadows. The forest behind Millbrook General Hospital was denser than clouds at midnight, its twisted branches weaving a tapestry of secrets and threats above Isadora Vale's head. Each step on the mossy trail made Izzy more aware of how her world had shifted. She felt Cameron's presence beside her. With every movement, he balanced a wild grace and vigilant tension, amber eyes always scanning the shadows, jaw set firm in silent determination. Around them, cold air pressed close. Even the moon seemed hesitant, dropping silver fragments through the thicket as if testing where to shine. Izzy's mind whirled as they advanced deeper into the wood. The thrill of her healing ability still pulsed in her fingertips, a gnawing reminder. Nothing would ever be the same. Echoes from her grandmother's letter spun like ghosts, warnings and promises bleeding together. Trust only those who bleed for you first. Yet Cameron hadn't shed blood for her. Not directly, but she'd kept him from slipping away into oblivion. Was that enough? Did her powers count as proof of trust or something else entirely? The Alpha's stride led them to a brief clearing. Shadows bent and recoiled, as if flinching from the power the werewolf exuded. Cameron slowed, sniffed the air, a gesture so animal that Izzy's heart skipped. "There's movement up ahead," he murmured. She nodded, uncertainty sliding through her veins in colder waves than the mountain wind. "Stay close," Cameron added, and without warning, his form shivered in the moonlight. Limbs elongated, bones crackled, and dark fur erupted over his skin. In seconds, a towering lupine silhouette stood beside her. Not monstrous or grotesque, rather regal and precise, built for protection and dominance. His golden eyes never wavered. "I am your protector," Cameron said, his voice resonant with a supernatural force. "The Alpha of Millbrook Pack. Our law is loyalty, first and always." Izzy's lips parted, words lost before forming. His transformation, impossible in daylight logic, seemed natural here where moon and forest colluded. "Okay," she whispered, though okay did no justice to the shattered pillars of her belief. Suddenly, nearby branches snapped. Someone, approaching. Cameron willed his body back, muscle and fur shrinking. He was human again. "Come." He reached for Izzy's hand. The heat of his grasp was startling, reassuring. Together they ran, weaving past sleeping ferns and fallen logs. Up ahead, a flicker of firelight glimmered through warped windows. An old cabin. Its logs were sagging but stubborn, defying nature's decay. Cameron pushed open the door for Izzy, revealing a room tense with unspoken danger. Inside, two figures waited by the hearth. One, tall and pale, wore midnight like a cloak. The other crouched, every sinew taut, claws sharp and glinting against the ash. Izzy drew in a trembling breath. Nathaniel Volkov. His icy gaze bored into her, calculating yet oddly gentle. The man's presence resonated with the kind of power built over centuries, poised, meticulous, and dangerous. "Welcome, Isadora," Nathaniel said, voice so smooth it could have been poured over glass. "You have done something few mortals ever could." Cameron stepped forward, shoulders squared. "She's under my protection." His statement was less threat, more declaration. Nathaniel nodded, never relinquishing that delicate smile. "Protection is admirable, Alpha, but you must admit, the game has changed. The mediator changes everything." His gaze shifted to Izzy, as if measuring her soul's dimensions. Izzy shivered. "I'm not here to change anything. I don't even know what I am." Nathaniel approached, presence a chill against her fevered thoughts. "My kind, vampires, were driven underground long ago by fear and jealousy. Your kind mediators carry the legacy of unity and healing. Most of your bloodline vanished in wars. The few who remain are targets, not saviors." Cameron's jaw flexed. "Our pack suffered because someone wanted us divided." Nathaniel raised one brow. "As did my coven." Izzy listened, trying to shape coherence from the dread blooming in her chest. Their words painted a history as tragic as it was mysterious. The supernatural politics. Old wounds between pack and coven. The mediator in their midst was a test, a promise, a threat. Nathaniel's gaze hardened. "You are a bridge, Isadora. The wolf offers ferocity and kinship. I offer knowledge, eternity, and sanctuary." Cameron's voice cut through. "She needs freedom, not bargains." Nathaniel countered. "Perhaps, but she must know what's coming." Firelight leapt higher, shadows warring with the glow. Izzy's hands glowed faint and gold. Habit now, not surprise. Every word locked tight around her heart. "Why me?" she asked. Nathaniel's face softened. "Mediators are born from loss. Your family's death was not random." A shudder ran down Izzy's spine. Her grandparents, their stories, their warnings. She remembered sitting at their feet, hearing about ancient times, wars forgotten by humans. The tales sounded like fairy stories then, but now each memory felt etched into reality. Suddenly the room's tension thickened. Nathaniel's eyes flickered to the window. "We're being watched," Cameron snarled. "Victor's spies." Izzy turned, pulse hammering in her ears. "Victor Rothschild killed my parents. she whispered. Nathaniel nodded slowly. His reach is long. You have awakened, and now you are his objective. Izzy closed her eyes, searching for strength in the depths of panic. Why do I feel you want something from me? Nathaniel's smile faded. I want peace. Cameron interrupted. Every promise from the coven has been betrayal. Izzy's head buzzed. I was told to trust those who bleed for me. Why should I trust either of you? Cameron bowed his head. Because I will fight for you. Beyond Pack, beyond law. You are the future of Millbrook. Nathaniel offered his wrist. Then let me show you. Vampire blood is sacred. Let me give you proof. Before Izzy could protest, Nathaniel made a small incision on his forearm. The act ritualistic and deliberate. Ruby droplets shimmered in the firelight. Izzy's power thrummed, her palm hovering, nervous but willing. As she touched his skin, gold light sparked, and the small injury closed instantly. Nathaniel drew a breath. You are the mediator. Cameron pulled away a bit. Now you know. Vampire or wolf. Each makes their claim. Minutes passed, heavy with implication. Izzy felt fate weaving itself thicker, more irrevocable around her. She watched Nathaniel and Cameron, adversaries by nature, allies by necessity. Her thoughts spun. What would her parents have wanted? Was unity ever truly possible? Nathaniel stepped back, posture reflecting ancient weariness. The world is changing, Isadora. Victor's forces grow bolder. The town's disappearances are the start. Cameron moved to the window, scanning outside, every sense alert. Izzy pressed fingers to her temples. Do I have a choice? Cameron's gaze softened. You always do. Nathaniel agreed. But every choice bears a price. Outside, the howl of wolves rolled over the treetops, mingling with the spectral hush of a world on edge. Izzy stepped closer to the fire, watching its dance and feeling its warmth seep into her bones. Would she choose wild loyalty or eternal night? Or, as her grandmother's voice whispered, could she find a third path? One of healing, not war. She remembered childhood nights with stories about mediators, told in candlelit rooms, voices trembling in reverence and fear. They were always at risk, always hunted, and always needed by both sides. Tonight, Millbrook was different. The borders between worlds had faded. Izzy reached for hope inside herself, buried but persistent. Nathaniel's gaze landed on her, gentler now. I cannot undo what happened to your family, but I can promise the truth. Cameron's stance was unyielding. Trust is earned, not demanded. Izzy found her voice, steadier than she felt. I am not a prize. I am a person with choices. Nathaniel smiled, lips curling in reluctant respect. Then choose wisely. Silence stretched, thick as velvet. Then, from outside, a branch snapped. A warning or a greeting, no one could say. Cameron moved closer. The pack waits for word from me. You're their hope. Nathaniel added, my coven senses the shift too. Some will want you gone. Others will try to court you. Izzy stood between them, flame in her veins, uncertainty flowing like river water. Tell me everything. For the next hour, both men spoke. Tales of battles lost, kin killed, truce shattered. Nathaniel described the covenant laws. Cameron told of pack rituals and loyalty oaths, all focused on a singular truth. Izzy's existence altered everything. Fate pressed close. But she refused to let fear rule her. She listened, questioned, challenged. The stories revealed cracks in their certainty, brief moments of humor, longing, grief. The night wore on, fire burning low, but resolve waxed within her. At last, tired but clear-headed, Izzy declared, I'll help where I can, but I choose how. Nathaniel and Cameron nodded, uneasy truce forged in gold and ash. Dawn neared. Izzy looked out at Millbrook, her home, now forever changed. Her grandmother's letter pulsed in thought. Trust only those who bleed for you. Tonight, 2 men had bled and survived her light. The forest outside braced for the next act in an old war, waiting for the mediator's step. Izzy closed her eyes, trusting neither pack nor coven, but herself, resolving that, whatever came, she was not prey. The night's shadows retreated as the fire's final embers glowed. She walked into uncertainty, choice blazing quietly in her heart. Chapter 3. Uneasy Refuge. The air was thick with tension and unspoken words, as Isadora blinked awake, her eyelids heavy but mind sharp. The warmth of the fireplace barely touched the chill that clung to her bones. She was no longer in the safety of her modest apartment, or the hospital corridors she had known her entire life. Instead, she found herself in a grand but shadow-draped mansion, the home of Nathaniel Volkov, the vampire lord who now played a critical role in her tangled fate. Despite the opulence that surrounded her, Izzy's heart raced with apprehension. She'd been taken here after a frantic escape through the forest, a desperate move after Victor Rothschild's shadowy agents had tracked Cameron Silverwood and her to the edge of the Pack's domain. Victor's influence stretched like a suffocating web, and his thirst for control was ruthless. Nathaniel stood by the tall windows, his pale face reflecting the faint glow of the moonlight. His piercing blue eyes caught hers, filled with both concern and careful calculation. "You are out of immediate danger," he said, his voice a cool balm against the storm rumbling through her chest. The door slammed open suddenly, interrupting the fragile calm. Cameron stepped inside, his dark gaze burning as he took in the room, Izzy's eyes following the tension radiating from him. The Alpha's loyalty was fierce and visible, a silent promise that no harm would come while he stood guard. "We don't have much time," Cameron growled, pacing the length of the room. "Victor's forces are regrouping. They'll come hard." His words carried years of battle and loss. Izzy reached out instinctively, touching Cameron's arm, grounding them both. "What can I do?" Nathaniel approached, stepping into the space between them. "Your gift is rare, but it is also a beacon. It draws others, friend and foe alike. And you too," Izzy whispered, eyes flickering between them, "aren't just allies by chance." A hint of frustration crept in. "How can I trust either of you when your histories are filled with conflict?" Cameron met her gaze with steady resolve. "The Pack is fractured. Some demand your capture. I protect what's left." His voice softened. "Because you hold the future in your hands." Nathaniel's expression darkened momentarily. "The Coven is wary, but I've chosen to shelter you, for now." As the night deepened, Izzy's unease grew. Within her stirred powers she barely understood, and around her, old hatred between wolf and vampire threatened to rip apart fragile new bonds. Suddenly, a distant howl tore through the silence. Cameron's head snapped toward the window, muscles coiling. "That's the Pack. They're calling." Izzy stood, heart pounding. This uneasy refuge felt both a sanctuary and a cage. Hours blurred in exchanges of whispered strategies, cautious glances, and veiled threats. Underneath, Izzy sensed an unspoken question hanging heavily. Who would truly stand by her side in the war to come? Morning light found Izzy alone by the window, hands glowing faintly as she pondered the fragile balance of trust and power binding her to both Cameron and Nathaniel. Her journey was no longer just about survival. It was about choosing what she would become. Long before Izzy was born, the Millbrook Pack had been a proud lineage of shapeshifters bound to the forest and to each other. Their existence was a delicate balance between the worlds of men and beast, rooted in sacred traditions and unbreakable laws. Yet decades of war with the underworld coven of vampires had bled the Pack to near extinction. Cameron, as Alpha, bore the scars of those battles, a leader shaped by loss and relentless duty. In contrast, Nathaniel represented a darkness refined and ancient. His immortality stretched back centuries, his knowledge vast, his influence extending beyond the mortal realm. Yet beneath his cold exterior thrummed the rare pulse of genuine affection. Stronger now with Izzy's arrival, unsettling the fragile peace between predator and prey. Izzy felt the tension between these two forces like a tempest brewing. Though uncertain of where she belonged, she recognized that her power, rare and profound, might be the thread to weave peace or tear the fabric apart. Every heartbeat echoed louder, the night thick with possibility. The path ahead was uncharted, but her spirit ignited with a stubborn courage that refused to dim. She would face the night, the shadows, and the war to come, not as a victim, but as the mediator destined to change everything. Izzy's thoughts drifted back to her childhood, The stories whispered by her grandparents about faraway times when creatures like werewolves and vampires walked openly among humans. They spoke of mediators, rare individuals gifted with the power to heal and unite, but forever caught in the crossfire of supernatural battles. Her grandparents' eyes had always held a mixture of reverence and dread when they mentioned such things. The letter had hinted at a heritage she never knew she possessed, at powers she barely understood. Fear mingled with an unexpected hope. Hope that she might matter in a world often indifferent and cruel. Trust, however, was another matter. The warning to trust only those who bled for her first hung heavily in her mind. Were Cameron and Nathaniel her allies, or players in a much darker game? Her gaze flickered to Cameron, whose gaze was steady and fierce. Beneath that strength lay a man weathered by pain and a fierce loyalty that seemed unbreakable. Yet the chill that clung to Nathaniel's presence was undeniable, the charisma of a predator who had survived centuries. As they approached the cabin, Izzy felt the pull of destiny tightening around her, urging her forward, even as doubt clawed at her resolve. The decision ahead was monumental. To embrace the wild, fierce protection of the wolf, the eternal allure of the vampire, or to carve a path of her own making, beyond old allegiances and ancient wars. The night whispered promises of blood and power, but Izzy braced herself to confront them all, her past, her future, and the terrifying gift that bound her fate to creatures of fang and claw. The room felt heavy, thick with centuries of history. Rich tapestries lined the walls, worn portraits of long-dead ancestors watching silently. Izzy wandered to a grand bookcase, tracing her fingers over dusty tomes. The weight of 1,000 secrets pressed on her. Nathaniel's voice cut through her reverie. This home is older than most towns. Every stone, every beam soaked in memories of a time when we ruled openly. Izzy smiled faintly. And now, he said, we survive in shadows and whispers. Cameron stepped beside her. The pack's loyalty is fierce, but fractured. Some speak in favor of war, others seek uneasy peace. Izzy sighed. And where do you stand? I fight to protect. Cameron's eyes locked on hers. Not just the pack, but you. Nathaniel's gaze softened imperceptibly. And I offer sanctuary, knowledge, and perhaps something more. Izzy's breath caught. The promise of immortality warred with the instinctual pull to live fiercely in the moment. How do I choose? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. The answer was silence. Later, Izzy found herself alone in a dim hallway. The flicker of candles cast dancing shadows. She pressed her palm to the cold stone walls, sensing faint traces of magic lingering. Through the quiet, faint murmurs seemed to ripple, a convergence of past and present. Her own heartbeat thundered in her ears. I carry their hopes. I carry their fears. She thought of her grandparents, their sacrifices woven into the very fabric of her being. Trust was a fragile thread, yet it was all she had. Her hands glowed faintly again, their warmth a small comfort. The dawn began to seep into the darkness, a tentative promise of new beginnings and the heavy burden of choice. Outside, the first howl echoed again, a reminder that the night's peace was but a pause. Izzy steeled herself, ready to embrace whatever came next. As the growing light of dawn filtered through tall windows, Izzy cast one last look at the men who had become her unlikely guardians. Cameron, fierce and unyielding. Nathaniel, enigmatic and ancient. Between their worlds, she stood, fragile yet fiercely determined. No matter the storm ahead, she would forge her own path. Not as pawn, not as prize, but as the architect of peace between fang and claw. Her journey was only beginning, but for the first time, she felt the stirrings of hope bloom amid the shadows. I will not be broken, she whispered to the morning air, her hands calm, steady, glowing faintly with the promise of what she could become. Chapter 4. The Spark Within. The days following her acceptance of the strange and dangerous new reality were a maddening blur for Isadora. No longer confined to the safety of the hospital's sterile walls, she was plunged into a world woven from shadows and light, desire and danger. Each morning the sun peeked cautiously over the pine-lined ridges. Izzy awoke to the steady presence of Cameron. His lithe, powerful form was a promise of protection. His amber eyes mirrored endless vigilance. At his side, a teacher as fierce as the wilds themselves, he pushed her toward strength she had yet to imagine she possessed. Their training was grueling. His touch, whether correcting a stance or steadying a faltering breath, sent waves of warmth and something deeper through her skin, an electric mix of trust and temptation. Evenings, however, told another story. Nathaniel transformed the mansion into a temple of timeless knowledge and whispered secrets. In his refined company, Izzy discovered depths of history and power alike, etchings of an age-old struggle not just for survival, but for dominance and peace, the likes of which defied mortal understanding. His words wove a tapestry of possibility, his touch igniting a fire both thrilling and terrifying. The contrast between the two men carved deep trenches through Izzy's heart. Cameron's raw loyalty and fiery protectiveness gave her a sense of belonging, a dangerous comfort. Nathaniel, ever the enigma, drew her into a dance of intellect and sensuality, a promise of endless nights filled with mysteries shared if she dared embrace him. Yet beneath the affection lay tension thick as forest mist. Cameron's fierce possessiveness clashed subtly with Nathaniel's calculated charm. Between them, Izzy stood torn, her heart a battleground. One night, under a canopy smeared with stars, Cameron took her to the edge of the ancient forest. The air hummed with latent power, and the distant call of wolves underscored the rawness of all they shared. He spoke softly, voices low. "I never asked for this burden, the sole survivor, the last alpha. But I won't let us fade into shadow." His gaze caught hers, steady and deep. "You're a part of that future now." When his lips brushed hers for the first time, fire ignited beneath her skin. A fierce promise and claim mixed in the kiss, but where passion bloomed, uncertainty stalked. Not long after, Nathaniel arrived unannounced, his presence heralded by a subtle shift in the mansion's chilling ambiance. His pale fingers brushed hers in a touch both electrifying and tender. "The darkness inside me is not a curse, but a gift," he murmured. "With me, you will know eternity. The boundless power of endless nights." Their eyes locked in a moment heavy with unspoken desperation and temptation. Izzy's soul tugged in conflicting directions, caught between the fierce heart of the wolf and the ancient allure of the vampire. Amidst stolen moments of affection and fraught conversations weighed down with secrets, threats lingered closer. Victor Rothschild's shadow loomed ever larger, his agents pressing into the fringes of the pack's fragmented territory. The pack itself was fractured. Old grudges cracked the fragile peace, with some advocating brutal retaliation and others fearing total war. Within the vampire ranks, whispers of distrust and schemes murmured like venomous winds. Caught in this storm, Izzy's powers grew unpredictable and intense, intertwining her more tightly with the fate of both factions. Then came the near claiming, a ritual dense with ancient symbolism and fierce emotion, where the mediator might be irrevocably bound to one mate. This moment threatened to shatter the fragile balance, forcing Izzy to confront not just the men vying for her, but the length she was willing to go for freedom and love. Her heart pounded, a wildfire contained unpredictably, the spark within growing ever brighter yet more perilous. The path forward shimmered uncertainly, a precarious blend of hope and peril. Izzy knew whatever choice she made would echo far beyond her world, weaving destinies caught between fang and claw. And as the night stretched on, the mediator stood ready, fierce and unyielding, the spark within becoming a flame lighting the way through uncharted darkness. Long after the dawn had faded into day, the mansion held its breath beneath the whispers of ancient trees outside. Vines crept across the stone facade like veins, threading tales of a dark past into every crack and crevice. Inside, Izzy moved through halls lined with centuries of silent watchfulness, portraits gazing down with eyes both condemning and pleading, the dust of forgotten promises thick in the heavy air. The weight of the moment pressed on her chest as she considered the nights to come. Each day here hovered on the verge between trust and peril, wrapped in layers of desire and fear. Cameron's presence was a constant, a protective flame that warmed the cold reaches of her uncertainty. His calloused hands guided her awkward ones as she relearned the language of strength, the dance of survival. Their training sessions were grueling, muscles ached and breath hitched, but in those moments, beneath the boughs of an ancient forest, a fierce, unspoken bond tightened between them. Balance, Cameron had whispered once during a particularly brutal sparring match. You must find it in both body and soul. Our fangs and claws are the shield, but your light, that's what can heal. Evenings with Nathaniel were a different kind of trial and enchantment. The mansion's shadows deepened at his touch, curling around rich tapestries and shelves brimming with dusty tomes. His voice threaded stories of old, of kings and covens, of wars fought in silence beneath human eyes, of power wielded like both sword and shield. He held out a glass of deep red wine, its color like frozen blood. Drink, and learn to savor time. You will need patience beyond mortal years. Izzy sipped, feeling the cool bite and ancient sweetness mingle. Nathaniel's gaze lingered on her, filled with a mixture of yearning and something softer, almost vulnerable. The nights became a pendulum swing between Cameron's raw, fierce devotion and Nathaniel's magnetic, haunting allure. Izzy's heart twisted and turned with each stolen moment. The wolf's warm strength pulled her one way, the vampire's dark promise drew her the other. Yet outside this fragile love triangle, the sands of conflict shifted faster than the hourglass could count. Victor Rothschild's agents struck mercilessly. The pack's territory was no longer a sanctuary, but a battlefield claustrophobic with suspicion and betrayal. Some favored ruthless retaliation. Others feared it would lead only to extinction. Cameron's leadership buckled beneath the weight of such divides. Within the shadows of the vampire coven, whispers of unrest murmured through winding halls. Nathaniel was no stranger to intrigue. His centuries of power had taught him that loyalty was often as fragile as human life. Amidst this turmoil, Izzy's gift surged unpredictably. Her healing light sometimes flared uncontrollably, sometimes faltered when she needed it most. It was as if the battle outside was echoing inside her very soul. And then, a moment came that threatened everything. A near-claiming ritual, a sacred ceremony of old where a bond would be sealed forever, tethering Izzy to one mate. In the quiet of the night, two paths lay open, each calling to her with irresistible force. Cameron, the fierce protector, whose steady hands had saved her more than once. Nathaniel, the immortal enigma, whose promises whispered of eternity. The ritual's edge hummed with ancient energy. Izzy felt the weight of legacy on her shoulders, the dreadful beauty of choice. Her heart was a storm, fierce and wild, her mind a battleground of loyalty and desire. As the first light of dawn threatened to break this fragile night, Izzy planted her feet firmly in the soil of the present. She would not be a prize to be won, nor a pawn in an endless war. She would claim her destiny, blazing a path with the fierce light of a mediator unbound. And so, standing between claw and fang, Izzy took a breath that shattered silence and began to write a new story where not just survival, but love and peace might flourish. Chapter 5. Blood and Revelation. As shadows lengthened into night, the fragile tranquility shattered beneath a storm of truths and betrayals. Isadora's world, once confined to whispered warnings and cautious trust, erupted with revelations that threatened to unravel everything she had come to believe. In the dim light of the hidden sanctuary, whispered confessions unfurled. Cameron's voice bore the weight of pain as he revealed the truth he had long buried. Izzy, he began carefully. The pack was decimated not by chance, but by betrayal. I suspected. I feared that the enemy was closer than we thought. Her pulse quickened. What did you suspect? He hesitated, eyes shadowed and distant. That Victor Rothschild had agents within even our closest allies, he confessed. And that your lineage, your blood, is the key to ending the war, or destroying us all. Before Izzy could absorb the gravity of his words, Nathaniel stepped forward, his pale features illuminated by the flickering hearth. I have known more, perhaps, than Cameron has admitted, he murmured. For weeks I have watched you, Isadora, deciphering the depths of your power, Your bloodline is not merely a legacy. It is a prophecy long feared. Izzy's breath caught. A prophecy? Nathaniel nodded gravely. You are the last mediator born of both wolves and vampires. A unifier or a destroyer. Victor went to great lengths to prevent your birth, and when he failed, he silenced your parents. Pain and confusion twisted in Izzy's chest. The truth was unbearable and alive. All this time they lied to me. My parents weren't killed in an accident. No, Cameron affirmed softly. They were protectors, and their deaths were meant to keep you safe until your powers awakened. A solemn silence fell, heavy with impending doom. Then came the tremor, a distant roar of chaos beyond the safe walls. Victor's forces descended, tearing through the forest with merciless fury. We must move, Nathaniel declared, urgency sharpening his voice. The pack has been ambushed. Lives hang in the balance. A painful decision surged forward. Izzy knew that every moment lost could cost lives, yet the weight of her newfound destiny threatened to crush her spirit. Together, Cameron and Nathaniel prepared for battle, but the rift between pack and coven widened as give and take ebbed like a violent tide. Alliances strained against old wounds, and the war's true cost unfurled in blood and betrayal. Amidst chaos and fury, Izzy rallied, her powers pulsing fiercely, light and warmth radiating, healing injured wolves and vampires alike. Her role as mediator became unmistakably clear, a beacon amidst the carnage. Yet just when hope seemed to flicker, Victor himself appeared, a shadow from darkest nightmares, wielding ruthless power and malevolence. He captured many from the pack, threatening to crush the fragile peace with iron and fire. Forced into grief and resolve, Izzy made an agonizing choice, to surrender herself to Victor in exchange for those she vowed to protect. Chains of silver and ancient magic bound her, but within her burned a flame too fierce to be quelled. The night was far from over, and her journey just beginning. Izzy felt the cold bite of the silver shackles encasing her wrists, a stark contrast to the fire that blazed inside. She charted the faces of those imprisoned nearby. The fierce pack members captured in Victor's ruthless raid, their eyes pleading silently for salvation. The weight of responsibility pressed mercilessly upon her shoulders. To trade her freedom for theirs was a sacrifice twisting her soul. Yet surrender was a weapon in itself, a maneuver to buy time, to protect, to fight another day. Victor's dark smirk was a constant shadow, a reminder of the cost exacted by power. He sought to break her spirit as he had sought to extinguish the future she embodied. But Izzy's resolve was steel beneath the fear. As her hands glowed faintly even through the iron bindings, a promise echoed in her heart, that she was the mediator, the unifier foretold, and her light was far from extinguished. Victor underestimated the quiet strength of a heart bound by love, loyalty, and the fierce desire for peace. In the depth of the night, as foes circled and the world seemed to tilt toward despair, Izzy sat chained but unbroken, ready to face the darkness and to forge a dawn yet unseen. Her journey was no longer a solitary path, but a collision of destinies, a battle waged not just with claws and teeth, but with spirit and sacrifice. The blood spilled, and the truths unveiled were but preludes to a war where only the bravest would endure. And Izzy, the mediator, stood fiercely amidst it all, her story far from over. Outside the sanctuary, the forest erupted into chaos. Shadows moved with lethal intent, as Victor's command led a ruthless siege. The screech of claws brushing bark and the sharp crack of splintering wood filled the air. The pack responded with frantic howls, uniting in a desperate defense. Izzy's senses sharpened amid the turmoil. She could feel energy cracking beneath her fingers as she reached out to those wounded. Her glowing hands radiated warmth, knitting flesh where bullets and blades had torn. Her heart thundered as she worked, the pressure nearly unbearable. The weight of so many lives hinged on her gift. Each healed injury was a flicker of hope amid a storm of blood and fear. The battle swelled, a furious clash of fang and fang, of predator and prey struggling for dominion. Cameron fought at the forefront, commanding with unyielding strength, rallying his loyal pack even as the enemy pressed. Nathaniel moved with spectral grace, his speed and ancient power cutting through the encroaching ranks of Victor's soldiers. Yet the cost weighed heavy. Allies fell. The line thinned. A sudden rupture tore through the melee as Victor himself appeared, a figure awash in darkness, eyes burning with malice. His voice cut through the cacophony. "Surrender the mediator," he demanded, "or watch everything burn." Cameron snarled a defiant vow. But Victor's forces were brutal and unrelenting. In a heart-wrenching moment, many of Cameron's pack were overwhelmed, chains and spells binding them in iron grip. Izzy knew then that she had to act. With trembling hands chained, she summoned every ounce of strength left, pushing her healing light outward. Warmth threaded through the bonds of captivity, igniting a soft glow in the eyes of the imprisoned. The air hummed with magic and might, a fragile barrier against the darkness. Then, with the cold bite of silver cuffs and ancient incantations suppressing her powers, Izzy was led away by Victor's dark entourage, her sacrifice a desperate gambit to shield those she loved. Yet beneath the surface, a fire burned too fierce to be bound. Her spirit, unbroken and fiercely defiant, promised a dawn beyond despair. The night stretched long, but the mediator's light refused to dim. This was only the breaking of the old. A new chapter awaited, written in blood, choice, and unyielding courage. Izzy's mind swirled with memories of her parents, their voices faint echoes in the corridors of her heart. They had fought their own battles in silence, sacrifices etched into the shadows of her lineage. Each choice she made now carried their hopes and fears, a legacy heavier than any shackle. The chains binding her wrists glistened, etched with ancient runes designed to contain her power, but her spirit remained untamed, a stubborn flame flickering defiantly against the dark. Victor's presence was a suffocating weight. His cold gaze bored into her soul, yet beneath the menace, Izzy sensed an obsession, a terrible hunger for control of the future and all it might hold. The rituals whispered in old tomes within Nathaniel's mansion, filled with power and peril, echoed in her mind. The near-claiming, the sacrificial choices, each a web spun between destiny and desire. Fear threatened to unravel her resolve, but she clenched her fists, drawing strength from every whispered prayer and promise she had ever known. This was not surrender. It was a beginning. An oath to herself and to the worlds entwined with her own. Bound but unbroken, Izzy's journey was poised on the edge of night and dawn, darkness and light, fang and claw. And she would rise. Chapter 6. The unbreakable light night settled over Millbrook with weight. A silence full of dread, heavy with the promise of war and change. In the fortress Victor Rothschild claimed as both throne and prison, Izzy's world shrank to the bitter cold of stone walls, the agony of silver chains, and the pulsing power she refused to let die. Her mind ran in circles, haunted by memories of her parents' sacrifice, the whispered warnings of her childhood, the faces of those depending on her outside. She flexed her glowing hands against the runes, magic biting, fighting the urge to surrender, but always choosing defiance. Beyond the walls, the battle for Millbrook raged. The pack, whittled down but never broken, howled in the midnight gloom. Cameron took the front lines, his amber eyes flashing, his body battered but unyielding. Every command was barked with purpose. Every move was meant to defend, not destroy. He fought for Izzy even if he bled for it, the memory of his fallen kin fueling a determination beyond words. Nathaniel, regal and spectral, led the coven with ancient gestures and whispered incantations that painted the air with violet fire. Vampires glided through the trees, spells danced above their heads. Together, they charged, in a unity born only of desperation, toward the fortress at dawn. Inside, Victor stalked through candlelit halls, shadows clinging to him more tightly than his own skin. His army slithered through secret passages, ready to repel the pack and coven, but the old vampire's mind was on Izzy alone. She was the prophecy, the fulcrum, the last card in centuries of twisted schemes. Izzy closed her eyes, centering herself in the darkness. "We are not alone," she whispered. Through her bond, she felt Cameron's agony, and Nathaniel's hope, a triad of emotion and strength. Her powers surged and faltered, strained by the silver shackles, but not gone. Victor entered her chamber as moonlight streamed through shattered windows. "You will surrender," he said, voice sharp, blending old hatred with longing. "Your light is mine. You cannot unite what was born to be divided." Izzy summoned calm, refusing to let fear reign. "The mediator's power is choice, Victor. You cannot claim what you do not understand." A sudden roar echoed outside as the pack breached the outer curtain wall. Vampires descended with supernatural speed, magic cutting through wood and stone. The fortress became a battlefield. Howls, spells, flashes of lightning. Nathaniel and Cameron fought side by side, backs pressed together in the storm's heart. It was Cameron who broke through first, fur dulled with midnight, claws gleaming, voice raw. "Izzy!" He lunged at Victor, but the vampire spun, unleashing a wave of dark energy. The blast sent Cameron crashing into the wall, his wolf form straining against magic and iron. Nathaniel entered, face split with resolve and pain. His ancient spells twisted through the air, wrapping Victor in coils of violet fire. "Release her," he commanded. "Your time is over." Victor laughed, the sound hollow. "You should have killed me long ago, Nathaniel. Now see what your mercy has won you." Izzy watched the men she loved risk themselves for her, their bond remade through agony and sacrifice. The silver chains on her wrists grew hot. She gritted her teeth, searching for the wellsprings of healing, unity, and transformation in her blood. "Let them go." Victor sneered, spreading his arms. "You want peace? Burn for it." He conjured a final spell, black as oblivion, meant to crush Izzy's light and leave only ruin. The power lashed at her, slamming her against the stones. She gasped as the world darkened, the magic seeking to unmake her. Cameron rushed to intercept, claws and teeth sinking into shadow. Nathaniel poured every shred of magic he had, creating a shield. But it was Izzy who broke the chain. She recalled nights with her parents, stories told in the hush of secrecy, lessons about love, power, and the pain of choice. She remembered the pack's loyalty, the coven's suffering, the beauty in every dawn after survival. And above all, she chose unity. Her light exploded outward, gold and silver and violet braided beneath the skin. The runes on her chains shattered. Energy surged through both Cameron and Nathaniel, fueled by Izzy's will and the bonds they'd forged. The fortress trembled. Victor's shadow broke at its edges. Izzy raised her hands, radiating warmth and hope. The darkness in the hall retreated. Enemies dropped their weapons and knelt, awed. Victor tried again to summon his vile power, but found only emptiness, a lifetime of resentment evaporating in the radiance. "You never understood strength," Izzy said softly. "It lives in the courage to heal, forgive, and fight together. The curse ends tonight." She knelt by Victor as his own eyes filled with regret. Cameron and Nathaniel knelt beside her, offering support, solidarity, and silent partnership. Izzy pressed her palm to Victor's chest, not to harm, but to purge centuries of suffering. The man collapsed in tears, stripped of power but alive, a witness to peace. The pack and coven flooded the hall as sunlight bled through cracks in the stone. Cameron kissed Izzy's forehead. Nathaniel offered his hand, their bond unbreakable. Izzy stood, the true alpha, the new queen, the living bridge. The fortress transformed. Old curses melted into history. Victor, now forgiven, swore allegiance not through fear, but thanks. The alliances sealed with rituals, wolves and vampires side by side, hands clasped over fires. Izzy walked among the survivors, hands glowing with mercy. She healed wounds, soothed grief, set feuds aside. The children of both clans circled her, hope shining in their eyes. Cameron's pack pledged themselves to peace. Nathaniel's coven offered secrets, wisdom, and the promise of co-leadership. Rays of sun lanced the ruined hall, painting Izzy's future luminous. Together, she, Cameron, and Nathaniel guided both armies into a new era. Izzy herself was changed, her powers, once wild, now focused through love and intention. The voices of her parents whispered pride and joy as she set the final rites. Late in the day, Millbrook gathered to witness a new ritual. Wolves and vampires tied ribbons in the moonlit grove, the air dazzling with unity. Izzy officiated, declaring the end of war, the beginning of reconciliation. Night fell to dawn as laughter and relief swept through the valley. Victor, reborn, bowed to the triad, pledging to protect peace. Nathaniel and Cameron reaffirmed their bond to Izzy, not as rivals or conquerors, but as chosen equals, partners in legacy and destiny. Izzy stood in the ruins, whole and undefeated, every scar and memory woven into the fabric of her new world. Her heart was unbroken, her light eternal. She looked at those she had saved and those she loved, knowing for the first time that the future could be built, not on fear, but on hope, courage, and the unbreakable healing power of unity. The age of mediators, of claw and fang and light, had truly begun. Chapter 7. A Bond Beyond Blood. The new dawn over Millbrook was not simply a change in light, but the herald of a new era. The battlefield had quieted, yet the echoes of war still lingered like shadows at the edge of memory. Izzy, Cameron, and Nathaniel, bound by the trials of fire and fate, stood together amid the quiet ruins of conflict, their union more than mere alliance. It was a bond of soul, spirit, and resolve. The ritual that would solidify their connection was both ancient and unprecedented. Drawn from lore whispered in half-forgotten tongues, it was a ceremony meant to seal mates in an eternal bond, a claiming beyond possession, one forged in consent and unity. But no mediator had ever joined two mates, much less three. In the great forest clearing, adorned with symbols of both pack and coven, the ceremony began at twilight. The moon rose like a silent witness, silvering the faces of those gathered, the pack, the coven, and villagers who had braved cycles of fear to watch history unfold. Izzy's hands trembled slightly as she stepped forward, her companions at either side. Cameron's fierce amber gaze held steady, Nathaniel's calm blue profound. The air thrummed with anticipation, the ancient magic swirling in the air as the elders chanted in languages old and forgotten. Their voices wove around Izzy, a symphony binding and lifting her soul. Cameron and Nathaniel reached for her hands, their fingers interlacing with hers, the warmth binding them more firmly than the magic. The triad was unlike any ritual before, neither one claiming dominion, but all choosing to walk a path together. Symbols drawn on Izzy's skin with sacred ash and blood shimmered in ethereal light. A soft glow spread across all three, the bond igniting in a burst that resonated deep into the roots of the old forest. Izzy inhaled, feeling newfound power awaken, an ability to change, to heal, to unite. Her senses tingled as she shifted effortlessly between wolf, vampire, and human, embodying the tribrid legacy that carried immeasurable hope. As the ritual closed, Cameron wrapped a silver band around her wrist, a sign of his pledge, strength tempered by tenderness. Nathaniel pressed a pendant to her chest, engraved with intertwined fangs and claws, a symbol of their covenant, a promise of eternity shared. The crowd erupted in cheers, though many eyes glistened with tears, hope tempered by the knowledge of what had been sacrificed. Months passed, and the new bond forged unbreakable alliances. Izzy's leadership blossomed, her power tempered and refined through love and responsibility. She healed battle scars, both physical and spiritual, knitting a community torn for generations. The pack flourished, its numbers growing as old rivals laid down weapons, and village folk embraced the peace wrought by the triad. Nathaniel's coven opened its gates to diplomacy, guiding younger vampires to honor rather than dominance, their shadows softening in light. Together, they stood at the heart of Millbrook, the triad no longer just bondmates but legends in the making. Their union was a testament that love transcended bloodlines, that peace was possible even in the darkest corners of the world. And as Izzy looked to the horizon, she knew that while the journey ahead was still cloaked in uncertainty, the strength and love found in the claiming was a beacon to all those seeking hope. In their hands, the future was no longer a battleground, but but a symphony of claws, fangs, and unbreakable light. The dawn after the war had passed brought a fragile calm to the battered lands of Millbrook, yet inside Izzy's heart raced with the electric thrill of an unknown future. The bond she shared with Cameron and Nathaniel was no longer forged from desperation alone. It was a sacred triad, a connection transcending centuries of enmity, bathed in the promise of renewal. Preparations for the claiming ceremony had begun weeks earlier. Messages of truce and hope rippled through the forests and coven halls. Elders, old and wise, returned to guide the ancient rites, their voices tightening the threads of peace woven by 3 souls brave enough to defy fate. Twilight draped the forest in silver as villagers and supernatural kin gathered in the grand clearing. The air buzzed with anticipation and reverence. Faint flames flickered in lanterns adorned with lupine and vampire sigils. The scent of fresh pine mingled with sweet incense, and countless eyes, mortal and otherwise, were fixed on the glowing center. Izzy stood between Cameron and Nathaniel, a living bridge between pack and coven. Cameron's warmth was steady by her side, his amber gaze deep pools of fierce devotion. Nathaniel's presence was ethereal, cool and commanding. The ageless strength of a vampire king, tempered by a tenderness reserved only for her. The High Elder spoke first, chanting in an ancient language that stirred the very soil. Their words summoned memories of past bondings and sacrifices as the tribrid's hands were gently clasped. The air thrummed with energy when Cameron's hand grasped Izzy's, rough but grounding. Nathaniel followed, his fingers pale and steady, weaving magic in delicate motions. The ritual required more than ancient words. It demanded pure consent and a pledge born of heartfelt sovereignty. Izzy felt the magic unfurl in unseen colors, binding them not as master and servant, but as equals. A golden light enveloped their joined hands, casting soft halos against the crowd's awe. She moved into her new forms, wolf fur glistening beneath stars, the sleek strength of vampiric grace, and her human heart beating fierce and wild. The tribrid was no myth or legend. She was flesh and bone, light and shadow combined. The crowd echoed ancient chants as sacred glyphs painted her skin in pulsing silver and blood red. Blood was the language of ancestors. Ash was the mark of struggle, both intertwined along Izzy's arms and chest, like the story of her lineage. As the final word fell into place, Cameron fastened a silver bracelet inscribed with runes to Izzy's wrist, its clasp cool with promises of protection and unyielding loyalty. Nathaniel hung around her neck a pendant struck with intertwined fangs and claws, a symbol of the fragile peace forged this night. Cheers arose, a chorus of hope breaking through the tension that had held the land hostage for decades. Yet tears shimmered, for fallen allies, broken families, and the long road yet ahead. In the weeks that followed, this bond reshaped Millbrook's heartbeat. Wolves hunted less for blood and more for survival. Vampires embraced diplomacy and kindness, teaching restraint to younger kin enchanted by darkness. Izzy's healing touched every soul, knitting injuries no sword could repair. Her leadership blossomed, the weight of destiny balanced by the joy of newfound family. Together with Cameron and Nathaniel, she forged rituals that celebrated unity and honored the scars of war. Festivals stretched through moonlit nights, laughter mingling with song, drawing a community once fractured into a harmony of peace. Even the villagers, long wary of the supernatural, found courage to open their doors. Fear was slowly replaced by trust. Tales once whispered in fear spilled into hopeful songs. Yet beneath the joy simmered vigilance. The peace was new, fragile, and precious. Hidden eyes watched. Old grudges stirred in shadowy corners. But the tribrid's light shone strong, a beacon against the encroaching night. One evening, Izzy stood atop a hill overlooking Millbrook Valley. The wind wove cold fingers through her hair, carrying scents of pine and campfire. Cameron joined her silently, his steady presence a comfort. Nathaniel arrived moments later, shadows slipping behind him like a cloak. Together they watched the stars bloom, symbols in the dark expanse. Izzy's heart swelled. This was not the end, but a beginning. A new story written in light, loyalty, and unbreakable bonds. "We have rewritten fate," Izzy whispered. Cameron squeezed her hand. "That we have." Nathaniel smiled, eyes reflecting cold fire. "And together, nothing can break us." Under the molten gaze of the full moon, the tribrid mediators stood, an eternal testament to the power of love, choice, and unity beyond blood. Chapter 8. A New Dawn. 3 moons had passed since the unyielding light extinguished the shadow that had long plagued Millbrook. The town, once a battleground steeped in fear, now thrummed with the promise of renewal. War-weary pack members and vampire coven alike found solace in the fragile peace woven by Izzy and her 2 mates, Cameron and Nathaniel. Together, they forged a future written not in bloodshed, but in understanding and unity. The mansion that once seemed ominous now blossomed into a sanctuary where former rivals shared laughter and stories beside warm fires. Children with keen ears learned the histories of both wolf and vampire, their innocent eyes gleaming with hope rather than dread. Izzy's hospital had transformed too, a haven for healing both the physical scars of war and the deeper wounds of mistrust. In the light of dawn, Izzy often wandered to the hill overlooking the valley, where the whispering pines carried the fresh scent of new beginnings. Cameron joined her frequently, strength and warmth in his quiet presence. Nathaniel followed, a shadowed guardian, poised and serene. Their shared understanding was carved not merely by the rituals they had endured, but by the love that had grown in the quiet moments between storms. One morning, as the sun painted the valley in shades of gold and amber, Izzy felt a stirring deep within, an undeniable sign of life, a miracle she had never dared hope for. Cameron and Nathaniel stood by her side as she touched her belly gently, awe and wonder mingling in their eyes. "Our child," Izzy breathed, voice trembling with joy and newfound purpose. The child was a beacon, a living testament to the power of tribrid unity, the first of its kind, carrying the strength, wisdom, and passion of wolf, vampire, and human. The news rippled through Millbrook, igniting celebrations far beyond the borders of the valley. Elders from distant packs and covens traveled to witness this herald of a new age, bringing gifts and blessings, their ancient grudges softened by hope. Izzy's heart swelled with the magnitude of what they had created, a family unbound by traditional lines, a community reborn beneath a banner of peace. Yet, with joy, came vigilance. Quiet dangers still whispered from the shadows, remnants of those who wished to see the old wars reignited. Together, Izzy, Cameron, and Nathaniel stood watch, their bond a shield strong enough to weather any storm. One evening, standing beneath the starlit sky, the trio watched as the valley shimmered with life. The pack roamed the woods with renewed vigor, the coven thrived in harmony, and villagers embraced the supernatural as part of their own story. Hand in hand, Izzy and her mates faced the horizon, a future uncertain yet bright, a new dawn shaped by the unbreakable light that coursed through them all. As the years unfolded, the legacy of the mediator grew. Children of mixed blood thrived, their powers and spirits a living bridge between species. The trio's leadership ushered in an era of collaboration, enlightenment, and mutual respect. Izzy's child would inherit a world forged in the fires of love and war, bound by choices made with heart and courage. And so, beneath the endless sky, the mediator, the alpha, and the vampire king walked forward, forever united, forever strong, forever the guardians of a new dawn. 3 months had passed since the day when darkness was broken, and light reclaimed Millbrook in full grace. The town, once scarred by battles and whispered fears, now bloomed with tentative hope and warmth. The physical injuries and those etched in hearts began to heal under a delicate peace. The mansion that bore witness to ancient grudges and mortal suffering had transformed. It was no longer a fortress, but a sanctuary. Inside its grand halls, laughter replaced suspicion, and former rivals found camaraderie in shared meals and stories under flickering candlelight. Children of both pack and coven played in sun-dappled groves, their voices light and free, unfamiliar with the heavy weight their elders had carried. Izzy had taken this peace into her very hands. The hospital she now led stood as a beacon, not just for healing fractured bodies, but for knitting broken souls. Werewolves and vampires crossed its threshold alike, seeking cures and finding friendship. Boundaries blurred. Fear faded. At dawn, Izzy often wandered to the ridge that watched over Millbrook, a sacred ground where the wind whispered stories through groves of pines. Cameron was usually by her side, steady and warm, his presence a comforting anchor after storms within and without. Nathaniel appeared with the grace of shadow and light, his quiet strength balancing the fiery pulse of the wolf. It was during one such morning walk, bathed in the glowing hues of sunrise, that Izzy felt a stirring deeper than any magic, a life rippling within her, a promise growing beyond anything she had dared dream. Her hand instinctively cradled her belly, tears unspooling unchecked as Cameron and Nathaniel's faces reflected awe and boundless love. "Our child," Izzy whispered, voice trembling in wonder and fierce hope. This child was no ordinary child. It was the living embodiment of a tribrid heritage, the legacy of hope that blended wolf strength, vampire wisdom, and human resilience. A beacon for the futures of all species entwined. News of her pregnancy spread swiftly, igniting celebrations not only across Millbrook, but throughout the realms. Elders from distant packs and vampire courts journeyed to offer blessings, gifts suffused with ancient power, old grievances softened overnight, respect blooming from shared joy, promising an age where bloodlines no longer dictated fate. Yet even amidst these blossoms, vigilance remained. Silent watchers lurked in the shadows, remnants of hatred and ambition, who longed to undo the fragile harmony. But the triad, to which Izzy, Cameron, and Nathaniel belonged, stood as vigilant guardians. Their bond, deeper than blood and fiercer than steel, promised a dawn no darkness could overtake. By night, beneath the vast tapestry of stars, the trio surveyed their valley. The pack roamed free with renewed vigor, the coven thrived with dignity and restraint, and the townspeople embraced a reality where supernatural and human walked as one. Izzy, with Cameron and Nathaniel flanking her, faced the horizon unabashedly. The future evoked questions, challenges, shadows, but also light and unwavering hope. The years that followed etched new legends. Children born of mixed blood soared in power and spirit, bridging divides once thought insurmountable. The triad's guidance fostered an age of cooperation, learning, and peace. Izzy's child would grow in a world born from choices steeped in courage and love, not war and fear. And so, beneath the eternal sky, the mediator, the alpha, and the vampire king walked forward, forever intertwined, guarding the new dawn with unbreakable strength. Izzy, Cameron, and Nathaniel's story marks only the dawn of many. Across realms unseen, countless beings grapple with their inner shadows, seeking belonging in a world fractured by age-old strife, waging battles few could understand. Their journeys of courage, love, and transformation await discovery. By not subscribing, these voices remain silent. These journeys remain hidden. You walk away after witnessing a profound union without helping others find their own light. Being part of our supernatural family means standing by those still wandering the twilight between worlds. Ready to join us? Share your thoughts below. We deeply appreciate you accompanying us tonight. Your presence means the world. If this tale spoke to you, there's a treasure trove of passionate stories ready to welcome you. Tales of fierce loyalty, forbidden bonds, and eternal connections beyond the ordinary. Dive into another adventure now. To stay connected and never miss our next heartfelt story, click subscribe and ring the bell. We look forward to welcoming you into our storytelling clan. Until our next meeting, thank you for sharing this night with us.